Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Businessmen and Women of Color podcast. I am your host, Ann Alston, CEO and founder of ALSTNTEC LLC, and it is my great pleasure to bring these quality programs to you all. Today, we have a wonderful and inspiring guest speaker who will be talking about the importance of men in leadership and how this affects them now and in the future. I met this gentleman at a function, and I am so happy to have him on this broadcast. Before I introduce and bring him on, however, I would like to briefly talk to you all about how important it is to empower our young men by giving them information and tools necessary to become successful and to become a positive leader in their personal and professional lives. Too many of our young men are being lost. We lose them to street violence, police brutality, jail, drugs, and other misfortunes. I have 4 sons myself, and I worry every day about their safety. We are also losing our young girls. However, in today's broadcast, we're only going to focus on our young men. The most devastating violence that is happening today is police brutality or police killings of our unarmed black males. We all understand the devastation of losing a child. However, to lose your child in the hands of someone, no matter what the race, is and who is sworn to protect and serve the citizens is even worse. I cannot even imagine losing one of my children or grandchildren, and I certainly do not understand when a parent loses their child to senseless violence. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you some brief information about how this affects us directly. According to the Washington Post, there were more than 1,134 black males killed in the United States in 2015. And this is all from police killings. That's 1,134 men lost in 1 year. This number does not include black on black crime or black on other minority crimes, jail, drugs, abuse, or other crimes that occurred. And in 2016, this number continued to rise as our young men stand up and fight against police brutality. So I asked the question, where are the parents? And specifically, where are our male role models? And I'm not talking about basketball role models or music artists. I'm talking about fathers, grandfathers, uncles, cousins who live productive and successful lives and have the responsibility to ensure that our children are knowledgeable and safe. There are not enough role models in this world, and we need to do a better job of being mentors. While I can get more into my personal opinions about these issues, we all know and share and want to focus our attention now on how we can provide solutions to some of these problems. So using this technology platform, we will love to share our solutions through this podcast with our guest speaker here today, maybe answer some questions and provide some tools and resources that will help our young black men get back on track to living a more productive and positive life. So now I would like to introduce you to our guest speaker. I am so glad to have on the show today, Mr. Leroy C. McKenzie. Leroy is a native Baltimorean. I hope I said that right. And he received his Bachelor's of Science degree in Hotel Restaurant Management from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. He is also the president and CEO of J&F Enterprises, a distribution, publishing, and business consulting firm located in Baltimore, Maryland. And he is also a well-established author. He has written 2 books of poetry entitled The Inner Souls, Volume 1 and 2, which has been featured on Heaven 600's Poetry Cafe. He has also written 3 other amazing books, such as a book in finance entitled The Customer is Always Right, a common sense guide to establishing a strong and flourishing business. He's also written a book on entrepreneurship entitled Young and Gifted, The New Generation of Entrepreneurship, and also a book on leadership. The Art of Leadership: Success Strategies for the 21st Century Leader. And outside his normal practice, he is also a proud member of the new um, Palmas Baptist Church, where he served on several ministries, and he is also a contributing writer for the Men of Faith magazine. That is a local newspaper. Tubman, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing this, Tubman City News online paper, and where he writes articles on a regular basis. Um, Leroy's philosophy is following the purpose, bringing visions to reality, and looking to enlighten, empower, and impact the community that he touches. Everyone, please welcome Leroy McKenzie to the program.
Thank you, thank you, ma'am. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Great. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your show this evening. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So, Leroy, I brought you on the show because I was really interested in the books that you were displaying at the event that we were in, particularly The Art of Leadership.
Mhm.
And you spoke so highly about what we needed to do in order to move forward. And I really felt that this was really good information that our young men need to know about. And so I kind of want to get to know a little bit more about the book that you wrote, and what are you doing as far as, the ministry of how you're helping our young men today?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Well, the Art of Leadership, the book that you mentioned, the Success Strategies for the 21st Century Leader, came about with because of my passion for wanting for wanting this generation of I call us the now generation, which are those of us that are in our 40s and 50s. We're the ones who are in the leadership positions. Our parents have kind of moved towards retirement. Our grandparents are either still with us, or they may be, of course, in retirement, or may not any longer be with us. So we're the ones who are tasked with being the leaders in our families, in the government, in education, in business, and the church. So I wanted to talk about leadership from those different perspectives in this particular book, and those particular perspectives make up our community, and that's what comes. Let's say first and foremost to me was making our communities better, and our communities become better when our leadership becomes better. So I took that kind of thought process when I began to write this book, because I wanted us to understand leadership from those different dynamics, and to be able to see that whether it's one of them or whether it's all of them, being a leader in those capacities takes certain take certain strategies, and you have to have an understanding of it, and if we're going to be successful at it, and then also if we're going to be successful in bringing that the next generation that is behind us into leadership, because they're going to learn leadership from us. So just as we learn leadership or got leadership, our leadership ideals and perspectives from those who are or came in front of us. So that was kind of where this book came from, and what the premise was for it. But also my passion for young men was to, as men, we have to understand being the head of the household. We have to understand what is being a man about, what is being a leader about, and so I talk about that from the perspective of course, the family, and being a male in the family, and how we as men have to step up, because we have not done so in these honestly in these past couple of generations. And as I see, and this is only my opinion about it, since we've dropped the ball, that gap between generations understanding being men, being leaders, has grown wider and wider and wider, where that generation behind us, and even the younger generation, is becoming less and less understanding of what it is to be a man, what it is to be a leader, and how you act, how you carry yourself, how you deal with being deal with being a leader. So I try to, whether it's in seminars, whether it's workshops, whether it's even just talking with young men from a business perspective, or even just from an overall perspective, being involved with certain organizations that that deal with mentorship, even with my church. I was at once part of the mentorship program there at my church, so that these young men have men that they can look to. You mentioned it in your introduction, just about the importance of having someone that young men can look up to be able to see, that are outside of, and I'm glad you said it, that are outside of music, sports, and entertainment,
Mm.
because that's what the media pushes on us. That's all you see. That's all you hear about. And so as a consequence, that becomes what these young men aspire to be like. But they have to understand that there's nothing wrong with being being in sports, being in entertainment. But you have to understand that that's not everybody's purpose, and that's not everybody's gift. Those particular industries, you have to be very talented. There are very few that make it in those particular industries. So you have to understand that, that making it in those industries is tough in and of itself, but also there are other things that you can do other than being in music, sports, and entertainment. And I talk about young men all the time, and I give them this example. I said, you take music, sports, or entertainment. I said, each of those industries needs certain other industries in order to be able to do what they do. Every musician needs an accountant. Every musician needs an attorney. Every musician needs a doctor. Every musician needs a financial planner. So those are things that you can think about. You can still be in that industry, but it's not necessarily in front, in the limelight, in the front, where a lot of people want, because they want that limelight. A lot of guys see that because they want the limelight. But there are industries with there's I should say there are businesses within that industry that you can be a part of, that you can be just as successful, if not more successful, than that one or two entertainer or artist that you may see, or that people may talk about and everything like that. So
Right.
those are
No,
things that
that
I
that is
try.
yeah, that is definitely some really valid points. Now you said something interesting early on,
Mhm.
as far as what it really means to be a man. And so I'm just going to ask this general question because I
Mhm.
think it's good, to get a man's perspective. I mean, what do you think is missing,
Mm.
between, men and young men, or maybe fathers and their sons? I mean, what do you think may be the key that, fathers need to do, or even, young men that can mentor? What do you think is some of the things that they can do to help turn this around,
Well, I think the first thing that has to happen for men, and I talk about men in my generation, and I'm 47 years old, so I talk about the men that are in my generation, and talking with the younger men, those that are, let's say, 35 and younger, anywhere between 35 and 25, that age range, and what's missing is us being an integral part in their lives. That
hmm
has not happened in the capacity that it needs to happen. Until that happens, and then until we decide, as a whole, as men, that is unacceptable for us not to be an integral part of these young men's lives, it will continue to be that way. And what's happening, what you're seeing is you're having that generation between 35 to 15, 25. They are beginning to have children,
hmm
and I've said this before. They're beginning to have children. So you have these babies, I call them babies, having babies, and themselves not understanding what it is, because they didn't get it from that generation that's in front of them. So if I'm not teaching that generation that's behind us how to be a man, what it is to be a man, and they're now having children, they only go on what they see through TV, through media, through what they might see in their neighborhoods, or even, and I know This may get some people a little upset, but even single parenting, even having single family households with women. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that has a direct effect on these young men being the way that they are these days, and the men who are producing these young boys with the women, not not playing an integral part in their lives and growing up. And that's what's missing. That's the
That's
vital
what's
piece.
missing. That is definitely true. I mean, you would think that with all the technology, as you mentioned before, what they're seeing on TV and the media, and especially what I mentioned earlier about police brutality and, losing our people, you would think that we would take some of that information and kind of turn it around and say, I want this to stop and I really want to inspire, my son or my nephew to do something great. And but it's not happening. um I'm kind of boggled about it, from a female perspective,
Uh-huh.
but
Mhm.
I think for this particular session, what maybe, like you said before, they just do not know how to do it. So, let's kind of like run down maybe some solutions. What is some of the things that they can start doing, to kind of ease themselves into it? I mean, is it just a lack of confidence, or it's just that mentality that they do not want to be in the child's life? Or, I mean, you can tell me better than I can guess. So,
Well,
I mean, these are all opinions, but I think it's important that we kind of like put out some solutions,
absolutely.
and so that if any young men or any older men are listening to this podcast, and they have a situation where they know someone is not in their child's life, then maybe they can pass this information on to them.
Here's the thing though. He, uh, it is happening, and there are men who are in their children's lives. But here's the thing. The thing of it is those men are not being focused on. That the light is not being shined on them. Um, it's not being talked about. There are many of men that I surround myself with who play an integral part in their not only their kids' lives but other young men's lives. Those are the ones that need to be talked about, so that the young men who are out there and feeling like they have no one to talk to, that they have nowhere to go to, they have that resource to go to. And it's about making them aware. The awareness has to be there, that even if there are, and they're going to be men who don't step up, period, that we're going to have that, and that's fine. They're going to do what they do. And we try to reach them. But if we don't reach them, there are those of us who say, you know what, if he's not, then we have other resources that you can go to. It's almost like uh, back back growing up, when we were younger, when I was younger. There was always even if you didn't have a father figure in your house, you always had someone, whether it was an uncle, was a grandfather, whether it was Mr. Jones from down the corner, who would talk to you, who would nurture you from a male perspective, and let this, that, and or the other about what it was about being a man. That part isn't being done in our neighborhoods, in our communities these days. I will say that.
Hmm.
But
I agree.
there has to be this awareness that's given to young men that are out there, because they're hungry for it. I can't tell you, I can't begin to tell you this, how many, the hunger that is out there for these young men, that want that want exactly what you're talking about. How can I be a man when I'm not being taught how to be a man, when the only thing that I see is my mother and my
Hmm.
sister.
Right.
Have no reference. They have nothing to be able to reference to. So as a consequence, as they get older, it's like, okay, how can I act with something that I haven't been taught? If I haven't
Hmm.
been taught it, then I really don't know. So there has to be a concerted effort on men's part, like I said, on those of us who are older men, to take these younger men under our wings and say, you know what, nah, that's not it. That like those men did with us. Nah, bro, that's not it. And we have to hold them accountable, and we have to
Yes.
hold those men who have children and aren't in their children's lives accountable. That's the only way that doesn't.
But yeah, but how do we do that? How do you What can you say to, a man that's not in their child's life to make him accountable? Because, I'm pretty sure that people say you need to be there, you have to be there, and they
Uh-huh.
give them all kind of reasons. But, I don't know if you have this in your book or whether you can reference something in your book or the leadership that can point to that, to kind of give them an insight. How do you get someone to see that?
Well, the only that takes that's on the individual. I can only say something to you. I can want to motivate you. I can want to inspire you all I want to, but at the end of the day, you have to have the mindset of I want to be a better man, and hopefully, by talking with those men who have that mindset of just not being involved in their kids' lives, that they will see, wow, you know what, the impact that me not being in my child's life
Hmm.
is 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 I mean it is astronomical, because
Hmm.
we have, and I was talking with a friend of mine just the other day, the impact that men that we've had over the years. We have grown men and women that are still hurting from not having men in their lives. That's the impact that we have, and men have to understand that. You got grown men, grown women that still have not got over the hurt of not having their fathers in their lives, or their fathers not being an integral part in their lives. And that's what you have to talk to them about. That's what has to be.
Right.
Not beating them over the head with it, because that doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. You can never beat somebody over the head with something. It's about, look, I'm going to expose you to a different way of thinking. And if I can expose you to a different way of thinking, then hopefully the light bulb will go on in you. There will be something that'll be sparked in you to say, you know what, I've got to do better. I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. And as a consequence, I'm going to get my child in my life, and play a vital part in them growing up, or even if they're older, I'm still going to be an integral part of their life. Now, I might have lost all of those years that are gone, but we're here, we're right now, and we can move forward from this point, where there will not be a time that you do not know that I am here for you, that I love you, that I care about you, and that your life does matter to me. That's
Okay.
what men have to see.
Awesome. Awesome. And I can definitely relate to that because I actually, in my own personal experience, had, especially when, you're men and women of color, it is even more astronomical when the man is not in the child's life. And I know that from personal experience with my own sons and, going into a second marriage and having my husband Michael there when my children were very small made a huge difference in their life versus me trying to be a single mother and
Mhm.
trying to play mom and dad.
Mhm.
So, Leroy, tell me more about, what you do at the ministries and, in terms of empowering men there at the place where you do this, to give the audience some information about, what do you do there? How does it, impact the men that you mentor? Because I'm really interested to know more about that.
Well, here's the thing that I do. I'm just a part of my business is my ministry, and I call it that. And what I try to do is just to enlighten, to empower, and to impact individuals, men specifically, because there's such a need. There's so many things out here for women to be able to be empowered, be inspired, be impacted, and everything. And I've made a concerted effort to try and teach men, which is the enlightened part, because when you enlighten somebody, you teach them something. When you empower them, you give them the tools to be able to do what it is that you're asking them to do. Like we just talked about, how do you get those men to do what it is that you want them to do, as far as being involved in men's life. You got to equip them, and if
Mm-hmm.
they aren't equipped as men, meaning they understand what manhood is. They first got to understand what manhood is. What is being a man all about? Do I have the correct definition of what a man is and understanding of what a man is. Because if I don't understand manhood, then all I'm going to be doing is teaching them the wrong thing. So they have to understand what manhood is, and then they can go out and go back and impact other young men's lives. They can give back to those young men's lives, whether it's their child or whether it's another child that they've chosen to be a part of their life. So that's what I try and do, whether it's through my books, through my ministry, the books that I do, whether it's in my church and the different ministries that I'm a part of there. Everything that I do, I try to have those three things as a part of what I do, because I just think it's so crucial for us in this day and time, so in this 21st century, and like you mentioned, in our communities, that we have
Mm-hmm.
hope put back in our communities, that we have a sense of pride in our industries. I mean, in our communities, and a sense of strength and power,
Mm-hmm.
and us understanding the power that we do have as men in our communities.
Yes, and just so happened this morning, while I was at work, we had to have a person come out and fix our HVAC system.
Uh-huh.
And during the time that he was there, we were talking about his skill. He was telling me about his experience on being a mechanical engineer with HVAC system. And similarly, he mentioned that his son was very interested in
Okay.
learning a craft and how he is actually teaching him how to, do these things. He is also working with the other children in the neighborhood to kind of build up their skills, and was very happy at the fact that these kids who were out there doing all kind of bad stuff, maybe gotten in trouble or maybe gotten in jail, and have come out and have literally turned their world around. While I was excited, I mean, I was really, really excited to hear that. But I was also wishing, and I know people are probably going to say, again, this is a podcast for men and women of color. This gentleman was white.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I wanted to hear this same kind of enthusiasm from someone who I may have met who is Black. And I'm not being biased against any which way. I'm
Hmm.
just kind of outlining the difference of how much impact it is when men and women of color do not support each other in that same effort.
Yeah.
It's pretty much every man for himself or every girl for himself, and things of that nature. But we need to kind of bring it together, like you said, and really find that missing piece and be interactive in our children's lives and promote them and to help them build their talents and help them achieve their dreams so that they have a goal, and especially in the 21st century, we have to be leaders. you
Yeah.
know and so for this part, the podcast, I know you don't want to give away all your book because it was just that good. I mean, it sounds good, but I kind of want to give the audience, how this conversation actually ties into, the art of leadership, being successful, because, eventually these kids are going to grow up and
Absolutely.
they're going to be either working for someone or they're going to be working for themselves.
Right.
So, tie this in for me. Help me understand how your book will help someone to maybe this may be a missing piece for them.
Well, I think here's how, or what I think someone will get from the art of leadership, the success strategies of the 21st century leader. What I hope that they will come away with from the book is the understanding, like I mentioned, of leadership, what it is to be a leader. And especially from the family perspective, understanding being men in your family, the importance of us being in our families, being there for our families, like you just mentioned, having that enthusiasm about our families,
Hmm.
the love of our families that other ethnic groups do have, and we seem to be missing or lacking. It's there, and we have to kind of shine the light on it, but it is more so. I think we have to make a concerted effort to shine that light on those who have that perspective as far as being leaders in our families, because the dynamic of leadership in our communities and in our families, they're trying to change it, and we can't allow anyone to define our families. We can't allow anyone to say, it's okay to to be a single parent. Yes, if that happens, that's what happens, and we get that. But the dynamics, in order for a family to be strong and to be the way that it's designed, and have that strong foundation, there has to be that male figure there in the household, or it doesn't work. It's like
Mhm.
a three prong, those
Table.
things that you put on, like on a camera, like a camera stand. It has a
Right.
three prong. If those three things are missing, which is
Mhm.
the one leg is God, the other leg is the woman, the other leg is the man. If those three dynamics aren't there, you take any of those three out, it can't stand.
Mhm.
So we have to have that perspective that we can't stand if we're not there, and men have to especially understand that our families cannot stand if we're not there. That's the thing that I will say, that hopefully they will definitely get out of there, is that without us, our families cannot stand. You can't call yourself a leader and not be an integral part of your family. You can't call yourself a leader and be see our educational system the way that it is and say that it's acceptable. You can't be a leader and see our government being run the way that it's run, and not and call yourself a leader. You can't be a leader and see our businesses, even businesses being run the way that they're run, and not say anything about them, and understanding what that leadership is. We've got to get back to leadership, and when we do that, I believe you can truly understand what the art of leadership is, and you can put into place those success strategies in order to be able to not only for yourself be successful, but you can help others to be successful at it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that is really, really powerful what you said. You can't be a leader if you're not positioning yourself as a leader. And in order to even do that, you have to understand what it means to be a leader and to be a male role model figure, a man to your child. And those are really powerful, powerful words. And I'm hoping that everyone who's listening on the podcast, can kind of internalize this information and think of ways in which we could turn things around. I know that for my own personal experience, early on when I was married before and the father wasn't in my child's life, is that, like you said, I didn't beat him over the head. I just pretty much just let him know that it is vital
Right.
that you are a part of his life, because it takes two to make a child. And everybody has their own little definition about what is a parent and what is a father and a mother, and all that. But it speaks nothing unless you're in the child's life,
Right.
and that is crucial, because there's a lot of questions that young people have about their personalities that they can only get from their parents.
Absolutely.
And so if that person is not in their life, it is a void that will forever be there, and that question will never ever get answered. So definitely powerful, powerful words from you today, Leroy. I thank you so much. So tell everyone how they can get your books and where can they find you online.
Well, they can find me through the website first at www.jnf, and that's the letter J is in Jesus, N is in never, F is in fail, Jesus never fails, enterprises at yahoo.com. That's www.jnfenterprises.com. I'm on Facebook. You can look us up under JNF Enterprises, or my personal Facebook page, which is Leroy McKenzie Jr. And then also I'm on Twitter at JNF Enterprises One. And I'm also on LinkedIn, and then also on Instagram as well, under at JNF Enterprises. So they can find me on those. And they can email me as well at JNF Enterprises at yahoo.com.
Okay. So for the last question for this segment, if you had one major advice that you can give a young person right now that needs to have, everything that you were talking about today, what would it be?
Well, the one thing that I would tell them is this: it all begins with a mindset. When you have the mindset and the mentality of wanting to be a success, and wanting to be great, I'll put it that way, wanting to be great. You will stop at nothing. You will not let anything keep you from being and doing who it is and what it is that you're supposed to be. Find your purpose and you find your greatness. I firmly believe that, because in your purpose there is greatness. Because your purpose is not about you; it's about others and how you impact others. And as my pastor says, the mantra that he's given us is making life better for someone else. That's what it's all about. And when you find that, you live your life that way, trying to make life better for someone else.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much again, Mr. Leroy McKenzie, everybody, author, definitely a speaker. Please go out and visit his website. And if you feel compelled through this podcast to purchase his book, please do so. This whole purpose of the podcast is to educate our businessmen and women of color, and also for any individual who is looking for specific answers or solutions to their specific situations. And again, I want to thank you, Leroy, for coming out and really speaking your mind and giving us a lot of food for thought during this podcast.
Oh, thank you. Well, I appreciate it, and I hope I was able to shed some light on and help someone to be able to understand as well.
Awesome.